Hey folks. It feels as though we are still a little while away from hearing about the next big Legend of Zelda game. We recently found out that by the end of the current fiscal year, Nintendo will be revealing the Nintendo Switch's successor. Whether that be a Switch 2 or something completely brand new, we'll just need to wait and find out. There's also a Zelda movie on the way, but in terms of the actual games, we don't really know when the next one's coming. But what this does mean is that the next generation of Nintendo games are coming. It will probably be at least a year from now until we're seeing a new system release, but regardless, this next system will be the home for the next mainline Zelda game. I think we're all more than ready to hear about it. I for one am always making up little lists and ideas for how certain aspects of this next game could work compared to the last installment, Tears of the Kingdom, as well as my general hopes and wants. So in today's video, I've put together a wee list of some oddly specific wants I have for the next Zelda game. Not your typical better enemy variety or more linearity in the story. Rather, my own specific wants that could be seen as a little odd, but they're things I'd love to see added to the next game. Be sure to go and grab yourself a snack and drink, folks. Send them in on my socials for a chance to be featured right here. Subscribe if you aren't already for more fabulous Zelda content coming your way. And let's get into my oddly specific wants for the next Legend of Zelda game. Starting off, let's talk about consumables. Now, The Legend of Zelda already has tons of consumable items, from single items such as apples, meat, elixirs, and so on, to fully cooked meals to replenish Link's hearts and give him specific stat boosts. However, something I'd love to see in the next Zelda game that is kinda oddly specific is consumables with more effects, particularly negative effects. The current stat boosts are typically for positive things such as cold resistance or heat resistance. What I'd like to see is stuff that might have negative effects on Link and how we as the player are controlling him. For example, take finding wild berries. Growing on a seemingly harmless bush in the wild, you could grab them and think they're safe. But unless you know how to tell the difference between good and bad berries, you might grab a bad batch not safe to consume. And if you do consume those wild berries, that might have negative effects on the hero's condition, such as blurred vision, causing the screen to blur and make things a little difficult. They could also slow you down, making Link a bit lethargic and low in energy. This idea isn't restricted to berries though. It could also apply to stuff like water, as well as bringing back bottles you can scoop stuff in, which would also be pretty awesome, but say Link drinks some pond water instead of flowing stream or river water, and he could become a bit unwell, dizzy, and once again slow. Or even if you just mess up your cooking, it could have some negative effects as well. This isn't limited to just consumables. I'd like to see more things in general giving Link negative effects and making the world more of a challenge in little subtle ways. For example, moss that you can't touch, maybe growing over an ancient entrance to the next forest temple, or just out in the woods. I'd also love to see poison arrows introduced in the next game, making enemies with bows a wee bit more daunting. All of this for me would just add a little more realism to keep you on your feet, more danger to be aware of without turning Zelda into Dark Souls. And on top of all of that, you could add in some new systems and knowledge for Link to learn to be able to tell the difference between different consumables and whatnot, learning from experts around Hyrule and making his adventure a little more interesting. This next oddly specific want comes with something many Zelda fans have been wanting to see the return of ever since Breath of the Wild didn't include it, as well as Tears of the Kingdom also not including it. I really want to see underwater enemies in the next Zelda game, the other thing being underwater traversal. Technically speaking, it isn't required for underwater enemies to exist, but it would be massively better with it. This would be a return to underwater enemies as we have seen them in the past, but I honestly want to see a big improvement in how difficult they can be, as well as the variety. Over the years, we've seen simple underwater enemies like jellyfish, octoroks, and small fish. There are some absolute class underwater enemies too, such as Giant Octo from the Wind Waker, and bosses such as Morpheal from Twilight Princess, but that's more visually awesome. The battle itself was rather easy. I'm thinking underwater enemies get the same treatment as overworld enemies. small, medium, large and overworld bosses, as well as each individual enemy having difficulty variants. So for smaller underwater enemies, I'd love to see some ferocious jellyfish that could give Link a little zap, razor sharp clams that he must avoid, and even just some fish that can be provoked and attack Link. Then there'd be medium-sized enemies such as the overworld bokoblins. For this, there are many options to introduce new enemies as well as old ones. Bringing back hostile Zora would be pretty cool to come up against beneath the waves. Blade versus Trident, or perhaps a non-Zora but still humanoid looking water-based enemy, perhaps a new creature altogether. We could also have some rather large fish, shark sort of creatures lurking in the depths, and even everyday sea life but on a larger scale like giant clams, urchins and so on. Then there would be larger, non-overworld boss enemies equivalent to Lynels, perhaps the return of George from The Wind Waker, rock-armoured sharks lurking in the sea. And for freshwater, we could maybe have large reptile beasts inspired by crocodiles, both enemies that Link could mount as well. And then it's really fun and honestly quite terrifying to think about overworld bosses. This is where we'd find the likes of the giant Octo and the storm they can create once in battle. Only in this next game, I'd have the battle take place not just above the water, but also below. Fellow Thalassophobia havers, I'm sorry, but I must admit, as much as it scares me to think about, it would be a really awesome addition to the next Zelda game. And creatively speaking, the possibilities are endless, as enemies could be inspired off literally any sea creature. Giant squids, the Kraken, Megalodon, Mosasaurus, and so on. I'd just really love to see a great variety of underwater enemies in the next Zelda game. Now for a very oddly specific one, very me-coded if you will, a fossil discovery and analysis system. Yeah, I am a big fan of paleontology, specifically because of my love for Jurassic Park. I find it fascinating, and these last two games kinda catered to that love with all of the bones and remains found throughout the world, from giant creatures that likely roamed Hyrule many years ago to much smaller remains that we don't quite know what they belong to. This has really caught my attention, and I've even made a full video on the dark skeleton remains specifically found in the depths. If you want to check that out later, it would be much appreciated. But as for this next Zelda game, I'd really love to see more fossils and remains found throughout the world, more that we need to dig for or explore underground cave systems to find, a much wider variety with more features to set creatures apart and be able to tell what's what. I'm not quite sure on what the exact purpose of all this would be, but I can tell you that I would love for there to be a system where we can research these remains, work with other paleontology fanatics across Hyrule, and learn about the past. Just imagine exploring the depths of Death Mountain and discovering long-lost Dodongo remains, or investigating an ancient water temple and finding the remains of an ancient sea creature. Maybe studying these fossils and remains could help Link become more knowledgeable on current enemies, or maybe, and this is a completely out of nowhere idea, just maybe, some remains must be studied and revived in order to retrieve something that the once alive creature possessed. A relic to progress in the story, or something like that. It's a very specific one for me, but I'd just love to find a wide variety of fossils and remains and be able to procrastinate from the main story by searching for all of these fossils and learning all about them. Now for my favourite oddly specific one of the video. Fishing. If you know me and my videos, you'll know that I am a massive fan of fishing in Zelda games. To be specific, Twilight Princess. It was just so amazing. You not only got a pole to go fishing, but later on a full rod and reel combo. There was a variety of fish to catch and a variety of lures to use. It was pretty awesome, and I spent so much time just fishing in this game. I was really hoping that Breath of the Wild and then Tears of the Kingdom would reintroduce fishing to the game, but it just didn't happen. So in the next big Zelda game, I would love for fishing to be reintroduced. A rod and reel that you can bring anywhere. A much wider variety of lures, spinners and live baits to catch different types of fish, from freshwater to saltwater. Fishing from the shore to fishing on a boat. I want it all, and there is no real reason for us not to have it. If Twilight Princess can do it so well, then a modern day Zelda game can too. I'd have the ability to just fish anywhere. Any river, lake, pond or beach you find, you can fish in. I'd also have dedicated fishing ponds like in past games, places where you can catch fish with ease and learn the ropes of how to actually fish, as well as take on wee challenges set by the owner. Maybe each region could have their own, and I'd love for there to be side quests set out by people across Hyrule, people in need of fish for dinner, people who want to see a certain type of fish in the flesh. There's so much fun to be had here, and it's the perfect way to avoid the main story when you're not in the mood for it. It's peaceful and a lovely time. Thanks a ton for watching, folks. If you enjoyed, then be sure to subscribe for more fabulous Zelda content coming your way, as well as drop a cheeky wee like down below, much appreciated. What did you think of my oddly specific wants? Let me know what you think of them, and also let me know what your oddly specific wants are for the next Legend of Zelda game. I'd love to hear them. A massive thanks goes to my channel supporters for helping to make these videos all the more possible. If you'd like to help financially support the channel and get yourself some goodies like access to my weekly Inside Scoop post, your name at the end of my videos, and a shout out when you join, then check out the supporting links in the description. You can also find my socials down there if you'd like to keep up to date with me or join my Discord server. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day or night, and until the next time, I've been Hyrule Gamer.